The crate delivered to the human camp. The wind blew dust across the empty land. The human base stood on rocky ground, far away from any cities or trade routes. Soldiers there were bored, tired, and always waiting for something to happen. One cold evening, a strange crate was dropped at the main gate. It had no label, no sender, just a heavy lock. The guards called the commander, and soon a small crowd gathered around the crate. "What's inside?" someone asked. A soldier tapped the side. "Not food, not weapons. It's alive." Everyone stared. The commander nodded. "Open it." With a loud click, the lock broke. The metal door creaked open. Inside was a girl. She was alien. Her skin was soft blue, glowing a little under the sun. Her hair was silver and long, tangled like it hadn't been washed in weeks. She wore nothing but torn cloth wrapped around her. Her wrists and ankles were chained. Her big, shining eyes were full of fear. She looked up. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She only curled up tighter, trying to make herself small. The soldiers stepped back, surprised. "She's a pleasure animal," one said. "I've seen her kind before. They're trained to obey, to serve." Laughter filled the air. Some made rude jokes. Others looked away, uncomfortable. The girl didn't move, but one man didn't laugh. His name was Derek. He wasn't a soldier. He was a mechanic, quiet, strong, a man who fixed broken machines and didn't talk much. He looked at the girl, then at the others. "She's not an animal," Derek said. The commander smirked. "She's a reward, a gift. One of you will take her in. You all fought hard, you earned it." Derek turned away and walked back to his workshop, but he couldn't stop thinking about her eyes. That night, after the camp went quiet, Derek came back. He brought a blanket and a small bowl of warm soup. The girl was still in the crate, chained. She was shaking. Derek knelt down. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." He pushed the soup toward her. At first she didn't move. Then slowly she took the bowl with both hands. She drank carefully, like she was afraid someone would slap it away. "You hungry?" Derek asked. She looked up, then down again. She didn't answer. "I'm Derek," he said, pointing to himself. "Derek." He waited. She didn't say anything. He looked around. "You got a name?" No reply. He sighed. "Of course not. They didn't even give you that." The girl touched her chains. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "You want to leave?" he asked. She stared. Derek reached for her chains, but stopped. "Not yet," he said. "If I free you, they'll take you back, or worse." He placed the blanket on her shoulders. The girl's hands touched the soft cloth. She held it like it was the only kind thing in the world. "You're not a thing," Derek said softly. "You're a person, and you deserve better." He stood up to leave. But then something happened. The girl reached out. She touched his arm. Just for a second, then pulled back like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. Derek froze. That small touch meant more than words. He looked into her eyes. "I'll come back tomorrow," he promised. "I'll bring food, and maybe a name." She blinked. A tear rolled down her cheek. He didn't understand her pain, but he saw it. She had no voice, no name. No home, but maybe, just maybe, someone would give her all three. The next morning, Derek woke early, holding a small cloth bag filled with food and a soft shirt he had stitched himself during the night. The girl in the crate hadn't left his mind once. As the sun rose over the dusty hills, he walked toward the corner where they had left her, heart heavy with worry. But when he arrived, she was gone. The crate stood open, empty. Panic shot through him. He asked around, but most soldiers only shrugged. "She's probably with someone," one man said with a cruel smile. "Or maybe ran off. Doesn't matter. She's not a citizen." But Derek didn't stop searching. He checked behind tents, inside storage rooms, near the garbage units, until he heard a sound coming from the back of the power shed. When he peeked inside, He saw her curled in a corner, arms around her knees, the blanket he gave her still clutched tightly. Her eyes widened when she saw him, but there was no fear. She stayed still, like she didn't want to scare him away. Derek entered slowly, knelt beside her and handed her the food and shirt. "For you," he said softly. She stared at the items for a long moment, then touched the shirt carefully, as if it were made of gold. "You need a name," Derek said, after a moment. "I can't keep calling you girl." She looked up at him. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to speak. "Do you have a name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "Never?" he whispered. She shook her head again. Derek sat beside her, thinking. "How about Leah?" he offered. "It means light, because you're strong, even in darkness." Her fingers tightened around the blanket. Her eyes shimmered. She didn't speak, but tears fell silently. She repeated the word once, so softly it was almost a breath. "Leah." Then she pointed to herself. Derek nodded. "Yes, that's you now. Leah." She touched her chest with both hands. "Leah." Her voice was rough, unused, but beautiful. For the first time she smiled. It was small, unsure, but it was real. Derek felt something shift in that moment. She was more than a lost creature. She was someone trying to return to herself. He helped her into the shirt, gave her more food, and told her stories in simple words while she listened with wide, curious eyes. Later that day, Derek found a small, abandoned tent near his workshop and fixed it up for her, warm, quiet, and safe. He brought her there that night, and she slept on a clean mat, curled up like a child, the shirt too big for her small body. But she looked peaceful. When morning came, Derek found her outside his door, waiting quietly. The soldiers began to notice. Some joked, others frowned. "You keeping her like a pet now?" someone sneered. Derek didn't answer. He only told Leah to stay near the workshop, where it was safe. Every day after that, she waited for him. She watched him work, tried to help, learned words one by one. She pointed at things, tools, wires, metal plates, and learned their names. She was like a child discovering the world for the first time, but behind her eyes was pain, deep, old pain that hadn't faded. One night, while Derek was working late, she sat beside him and traced something on the ground with her finger. It was a symbol, strange and curved. "What's that?" Derek asked. She whispered a word he didn't understand. Then another, her own language. She was remembering, slowly, piece by piece. Derek placed his hand over hers. "You're safe. Here," he said. She nodded slowly. That night, when Derek left for his bunk, Leah stayed by the door again, but this time she didn't sit. She curled against the wall as if guarding him. The next morning, when the commander saw her sleeping there, he wasn't pleased. "She's a distraction," he snapped. "She's not supposed to be yours. Return her or use her. That's why she was sent." Derek stood tall. "She's not a thing, she's a person. Her name is Leah." The commander laughed coldly. "That's not how this works, mechanic. You don't get to name the animals." Leah flinched at the word, but Derek stepped in front of her. "She's not going anywhere." The camp began to whisper. Some said Derek was going too far. Others said he was brave. But one thing was clear. He had made a choice. And Leah, for the first time in her life, had someone standing between her and the world. Days passed and Leah stayed close to Derek, never going far, always watching with quiet eyes full of caution and curiosity. She learned more words, small ones: hot, cold, metal, safe, and most important, mine. When she said it softly while pointing to the small cup Derek gave her, he smiled. But not everyone smiled. The other soldiers grew uneasy. Whispers turned into complaints. "He's keeping her like a pet. He's acting like she's human. It's not normal." Then one evening, The commander called Derek to his office. The air inside was tense. The commander didn't waste time. "She was sent as a reward," he said coldly. "Not a guest, not a friend. You were supposed to enjoy her, not babysit her." Derek said nothing. His eyes stayed firm. The commander leaned in, voice low and sharp. "You have two choices. Use her or return her. That's the rule. We don't want a scene here." Derek clenched his fists but stayed calm. "She's not a toy," he said quietly. "She has a name. She's learning. She's alive in ways none of you even notice." The commander slammed his hand on the table. "You're disobeying a gift from a high-ranking slaver. You're putting the whole outpost at risk. They might come to collect her. Do you even know who you're dealing with?" Derek didn't flinch. "Let them come," he replied. "She stays." That night, guards came to check the tent Derek had built for Leah. She was gone. Vanished. Derek ran across the base like a madman, asking everyone, shouting her name. Most ignored him. Some laughed, but one younger soldier pointed toward the edge of the camp near the garbage units. Derek followed his gut. Behind broken crates and old metal sheets under the deep night sky, he found her. She was curled into a ball again, blanket wrapped tight, her small body shaking. She had run away to protect him. She had heard the threat. She had understood. "Leah," Derek whispered, kneeling beside her. "Why?" She didn't speak, but tears soaked the blanket. He carried her back quietly, set her in the corner of his own shelter, and locked the door. No one would take her again. The next day, the commander sent 2 guards to drag her away, but found the room empty. Derek had hidden her beneath the floorboards, a small tunnel he dug in secret. From that day forward, Derek lived in 2 worlds, above, ground, where he worked and pretended all was normal, and underground, where he taught Leah letters, shared food, and told her stories of Earth's forests and rain and animals she had never seen. "What is a bird?" she asked one day, voice shaky but stronger now. Derek smiled and drew one for her. "They fly, they sing, they're free." She touched the drawing and whispered, "Like me?" He nodded, though his heart hurt. Because she was not free yet. Word spread quickly that Derek had refused the commander's order. He was removed from several duties. Others stopped speaking to him. Some cursed him behind his back. But one night, as Derek walked back to his shelter, a strange humming sound filled the air. A small black ship landed beyond the fences, not human, not friendly, and Leah's face went white with terror when she heard the sound. She didn't speak, but Derek could see it in her eyes. She knew that ship. She remembered something dark. "They came for me," she whispered. Her first full sentence. Derek stood still, mind racing. If the slavers were back, the base might hand her over just to avoid trouble. He knew what he had to do. He couldn't stay. Not here. Not now. That night he packed supplies, carefully carried Leah out through the service tunnel, and disappeared into the barren wastelands beyond the outpost walls. As the sun rose, Derek and Leah stood on a rocky cliff, wind blowing hard. Below them stretched miles of empty land. No roads, no rules. Only danger. But also, freedom. Leah held Derek's hand tightly, her fingers cold, but her grip sure. For the first time, she was not hiding. She was running toward something. The base might call it desertion. The slavers might call it theft. But Derek called it rescue. She was no one's reward. She was no one's toy. She had a name now, and someone who would protect it, no matter what came next. The wind howled across the rocky desert as Derek and Leah moved through the shadows, avoiding drones in the sky and listening for engines that didn't belong. Every footstep felt like thunder against the silence of the wild. Derek had spent years fixing machines, but now he was fixing paths, reading cracks in the ground, watching the stars to move at night, sleeping beneath thick rocks during the day. Leah followed without complaint, though her feet bled and her Eyes burned from the sun. She didn't cry. She didn't ask why. She just held Derek's hand tightly, her tiny fingers locked into his as if he was the only thing keeping her alive. And maybe he was. They found shelter in a hollow canyon, hidden behind a wall of fallen stone. There, Derek patched her blisters and shared the last of their dried fruit. For a moment they both rested, but peace didn't last long. One night, while Leah was asleep with her head against Derek's chest, a light flashed high above. A slaver drone. Its red eye scanned the rocks, then flew away. Leah woke suddenly, heart pounding, sweat pouring down her face. She grabbed Derek's shirt, whispering fast in her own language, words he didn't understand but recognized from the tone. Fear, memory, pain. "They're close, aren't they?" Derek asked gently. She nodded once. He didn't ask more. That same night, he climbed up the canyon's edge using an old comm device to listen to nearby signals. One came through, clear and sharp. Target is female, small, blue skin, escaped, slaver priority, capture alive. Derek's chest grew tight. They weren't just looking, they wanted her back badly, probably to punish her, or worse. The next day, they moved again. Every few hours, Leah looked over her shoulder, her steps faster, her breath shorter. Derek tried to distract her, telling stories from Earth, oceans, trains, birds, cities full of people. Leah would nod or smile softly, but she rarely spoke. Only once did she say something unexpected. "I had a sister," she whispered as they crossed a dried-up riverbed. Derek turned to her, surprised. "You did?" Leah nodded. "She was older. They took her first." Her voice cracked. "She sang to me when I cried. I never saw her again." Derek didn't know what to say, so he just reached out and pulled her into a hug. She trembled in his arms. "I'm sorry," he said. "You'll never be taken again, I promise." The next night, while they hid in the remains of a broken transport truck half buried in sand, Derek heard boots. Not one, but several. He peeked through a crack. 5 slaver scouts, tall, armored, armed. One of them carried a collar. Another laughed and said in their own language, "She'll sell for double now. They always pay more after a rescue story." Rage burned through Derek, but he stayed still, holding Leah close as she covered her mouth with both hands to hide her breathing. The slavers searched the wreckage, but didn't look inside the lower cargo hold where they were hiding. After they left, Derek knew they had only hours before the area would be swarmed. He and Leah crawled out the back, ran under moonlight, hearts racing. That night they didn't sleep. They ran. They ran until Leah's legs gave out, and Derek had to carry her across a field of black stones that cut his boots open. Blood mixed with sand, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. They made it to an old mining station, abandoned but with power. Inside, Derek found a small lab room and locked it from within. There he helped Leah lie down and finally rest. But as she drifted into sleep, she whispered something again. Words not in English, but soft and full of sadness. "That's her name, isn't it?" Derek guessed. "Your sister?" Leah nodded slowly. "Naya." Derek whispered the name back to her like a prayer. Naya. The next morning, he activated the station's long-range emergency beacon. He coded a message for Earth Command. "This girl is not a slave. She has a name. She is hunted by those who took her past. I will not let them take her future." He didn't know if anyone would answer. He didn't know if help would come. But he knew one thing for sure. He would fight, bleed, and even die to protect the girl who now slept beside him, safe for one more day. For 2 full days, Derek and Leah stayed hidden in the abandoned mining station, sharing scraps of food and clean water found in old storage tanks. The beacon had been left running, its signal blinking red in the corner of the room, but no reply came. Outside, the desert winds howled louder each night, carrying dust and the growl of engines in the distance. Derek knew it was only a matter of time before the slavers returned. Inside, Leah drew symbols on the floor using bits of coal, shapes from her homeworld. Some were names, others stories. Derek watched her, amazed at how much she remembered, how much had been trapped behind pain. But then, on the third night, everything changed. A call came through the beacon, faint, full of static, but clear enough. Human base, your mechanic Derek is wanted for theft and disobedience. Return him and the alien girl alive. Derek froze. So did Leah. Earth Command hadn't answered, but the slavers had. They had hacked the beacon, used it to send threats instead of help. That meant they were close. And worse, they knew Derek's name. Derek didn't waste time. He packed everything, helped Leah into warmer clothes, and prepared to leave. But when he opened the hatch door to exit the station, he saw something that made his blood go cold. 2 transport bikes, human-made, painted with base colors, soldiers, from his own camp. Derek grabbed Leah's hand and pulled her back. They sent people to bring us in, he whispered. Not slavers, our own. From a crack in the wall he saw them. 3 men armed and searching. One of them was Sergeant Clem, a man who had once shared drinks with Derek. Now, he was holding a stun rifle. Orders are clear, Clem told the others. Find the girl. Bring her back, the slavers are paying. Derek's jaw tightened. The base had sold them out. Not just the commander, the entire system. They don't see her as a person, he whispered to Leah. They see you as payment. Leah didn't speak. She simply gripped his hand and nodded. She understood. Together they escaped through the rear tunnel, crawling through mud and old cables. The bikes couldn't follow, so Derek and Leah ran again, this time deeper into the rocky hills where the machines couldn't reach. But this time, Derek wasn't just running. He was planning. That night, under a broken metal arch, Derek turned to Leah. If the base wants to trade you, he said, I'll trade them something bigger. She blinked, confused. He explained his plan. Inside the mining station was old power tech, illegal tech, once used to mine unstable energy. If he could overload it, turn it into a massive burst, the slavers' tracking systems would be blinded for hours, and the base, they'd get a warning they wouldn't forget. It's risky, he said, but it might give us enough time to disappear forever. Leah placed her hand on his. We do it, she said quietly. That was all he needed. They returned to the station before sunrise. Derek worked fast, hands covered in oil and dust. Leah stood watch. When the system was ready, he set a 10-minute timer. They grabbed supplies and ran. At exactly 10 minutes, the sky lit up with a pulse of bright blue light that crackled like lightning across the horizon. Back at the base, alarms blared. Comms went dark. Drones dropped from the sky. And, in the chaos, slaver ships turned in circles, blind and confused. Derek and Leah didn't stop running until the light faded behind them. But the price was paid. The base declared him a traitor. His name was blacklisted. Wanted posters showed his face, labeled him human defector. The slavers raised the bounty on Leah. Every eye would now be searching. But Derek didn't care, because that night they found a small cave near a waterfall. Clean water, hidden path, safe walls. Leah lit a small fire, and they sat together, silent but alive. You gave up everything, Leah said after a long time. Derek looked at her, surprised she had spoken so clearly. Not everything, he replied. I still have you. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. You're not like them, she whispered. You never saw me as less. He smiled gently. You were never less. They just never looked close enough. And in that quiet cave, beneath stars neither of them had names for, a man called Traitor and a girl once called Animal found something more powerful than reward, rank, or war. They found each other. The days turned quiet, again as Derek and Leah stayed hidden in the cave near the waterfall, surrounded by walls of stone and the soft sound of falling water that gave them peace. Derek had grown thinner, more tired, but never once complained, and Leah, once scared to speak, now whispered stories in her language during the nights. telling Derek about stars she remembered from her planet, about songs her sister used to. One evening, as the fire crackled between them, Derek stared into the flame with a new thought building in his heart. "It's not enough to hide anymore," he finally said. Leah looked at him, confused. "We can't run forever. I have to do something louder, something they can't ignore." The next morning, Derek climbed a steep mountain near the cave where an old satellite tower still stood, covered in vines and broken wires. He spent hours repairing the signal dish, using pieces from his pack and parts scavenged from old mining tools. Leah helped, handing him tools and learning every step silently. Finally, after 3 days, the signal turned green. Derek sat down beside the control panel, typed in a transmission code, and began to speak. "This is Derek Shaw, former mechanic of Outpost 9. I'm alive. I'm not a traitor. I took nothing. I stole no property. I only gave someone a name." His voice shook, but he continued. "The alien girl they called a pleasure animal. Her name is Leia. She is not a thing. She is not a reward. She is not for sale." He paused, glanced at Leia, who sat cross-legged behind him, quietly watching. She remembers pain. She remembers chains. But she also laughs now. She sings. She learns. She has more strength than any soldier I ever met. He sent the message in every human language and every common galactic tongue, and then he added images. Photos of Leah reading, smiling, touching flowers by the stream, and sleeping peacefully wrapped in a blanket. It was no longer just a message. It was proof. He hit the final command and the signal launched. It bounced from one satellite to another, faster than any ship, brighter than any lie. The next day, they waited. Nothing came. But on the second night, something changed. Derek was gathering wood when he saw the sky light up, not with slaver ships, but with blue beams of a long-range human vessel. An Earth news drone hovered above the canyon. It had heard the signal, and it was broadcasting. Within hours, thousands of people across the colonies saw the footage. The mechanic who gave an alien girl a name. The girl who had never spoken, now smiling and reading. People cried. People got angry. A wave of questions spread across systems. Why was she treated like a reward? Who gave the order? How many more are like her? Back at the outpost, the commander smashed a screen in fury, demanding the signal be erased, but it was too late. Truth had traveled faster than orders. The slavers were furious too. They doubled the bounty. They sent hunters. But everywhere Derek's message appeared, people started looking at the bounty differently. "That's the girl from the video," someone would whisper. "She doesn't look dangerous. She's just a kid." And suddenly, silence wasn't on the slavers' side anymore. Leia and Derek stayed hidden, but now they weren't running. Alone. A trader dropped supplies near the cave without asking for payment. A passing scavenger left medicine and clean clothes at the entrance and disappeared. Leah wore a dress for the first time in her life. She twirled once in front of Derek and smiled wide. "Is this me?" she asked. Derek grinned. It always was. That night, while stars blinked softly above them, Derek asked, "What do you want to do when this is over?" Leah tilted her head. "Over?" He nodded. "When no one's chasing you, when you're safe." She thought for a long time, then said, "I want to help others like me." Derek's throat tightened. She wasn't thinking of revenge. She was thinking of hope. She was still healing, but already dreaming of lifting others. The next morning, a new message came through a private signal. It was short. "Help is coming. Protect her." No signature, no ID. But the voice was human and strong. Derek stared at the screen, feeling tears sting his eyes. Someone believed him. Someone important. As Leah leaned over his shoulder and read the words slowly, sounding them out one by one, Derek whispered to her, "They're going to know your name, Leia. The whole galaxy will." She didn't look scared anymore. She looked ready. The sun rose slowly over the rocky canyon, its soft light touching the edges of the cave where Leia stood near the entrance, no longer hiding in shadows. She had changed, not just in clothes, but in the way she held herself. Her shoulders, no longer curled inward, her steps were steady, and the fear that once filled her eyes had turned into something new. Quiet strength. Derek stood beside her, tightening the last strap on a small bag filled with supplies, tools, and a single photo. The one where Leia was smiling by the waterfall. The message he had sent had reached more people than he ever expected. Whispers became voices, and those voices became action. Ships had begun landing across the planet, not slaver ships, but aid vessels, search teams, journalists, and even off-duty human soldiers who said they'd seen enough and were ready to help. It wasn't a rescue mission anymore, it was a movement. But with that movement came danger. The slavers would not stop easily, and Derek knew it. So when a scout drone buzzed outside the canyon, he was ready. He and Leia waited in the cave. As the ship landed, a sleek silver craft with no weapons showing and a single flag flying high, the symbol of the Earth Independent Council. A tall woman stepped out, dressed in dark blue armor with a soft face and sharp eyes. "You must be Derek," she said. "And this is Leia." Leia stepped forward before Derek could speak. "Yes," she said clearly. "I am Leia." The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time someone official from Earth knelt down and said, "I'm honored to meet you, Leia." That simple gesture broke something inside Derek. All the pain, the running, the hiding. It had brought them to this moment. He felt tears gather, but didn't let them fall. They boarded the ship quietly, and Leia kept her hand in Derek's as they lifted into the sky. From the window she saw the land below, the same ground where she had once been delivered in a crate, nameless and broken. Now she was leaving it not as a prisoner, but as someone with a name, a story, and a voice. The ship took them to a peaceful settlement near the Earth Council's central station. People there had already heard Leia's story, and instead of staring, they smiled. Children gave her small paper flowers. One old woman gave her a red scarf and said, "For someone brave." Leia thanked them all in her soft, careful voice. But the real moment came days later, when she stood before a large crowd of humans, aliens, and council members. Cameras floated in the air, recording everything. Derek stood beside her, silent but proud. Leia stepped up to the microphone and looked around. Her hands trembled, but she didn't back away. "They called me a pleasure animal," she said slowly. "They gave me as a reward. They said I wasn't a person." A hush fell over the crowd. Leia continued, her voice gaining strength. "But one man gave me food, a blanket, a shirt. He gave me a name. He never touched me in fear. Only kindness. Because of him, I remembered who I was. Because of him, I can speak to you now." She paused, then added, "There are others like me, still caged, still silent. I want to help them. I want to be their voice." The crowd stood, applause echoed. And for the first time in history, the Earth Council signed a new law, recognizing all sentient beings, no matter where they were born, as protected under human rights. Leia's name was written into the first document. A girl once without a name now stood as a symbol of change. Months passed, and Leia worked with translators, councils, and rescue groups. She visited stations, told her story, and held the hands of other freed girls who cried when they saw her. Derek stayed by her side, not as a guardian anymore, but as family. People often asked him why he helped her. He always gave the same answer: because she was human where it mattered most. One evening, Leia and Derek returned to the waterfall cave for a final visit. She stood where she had once hidden and whispered, "I thought I would die here." Derek looked at her and said, "You were reborn here." They buried the old blanket under a tree nearby and planted a small sign above it. It read, "Here lies the fear. What grows now is hope." As stars lit the sky above them, Leia smiled and took a deep breath. She was no longer a gift. no longer a prisoner, no longer a secret. She was Laia, named, loved, and free.